Welcome to the Communication Diva Podcast, episode 53. The Communication Diva has recently returned from New Media Expo 2013 in Las Vegas, Nevada. This podcast is a roundup of some of the people she met and some of the things she did on her trip to Sin City. Brace yourself. Apparently, not everything that happens in Vegas stays in Vegas.
Hi, this is Jen Swanson, and welcome to CommunicationDiva.com. I'm here to talk about the art of communication simplified. And you know, the root of most conflict is communication breakdown. And so the aim of this podcast is to help you to improve your communication skills so that you can take your business and your personal relationships to the next level. So that's what we hope to do here. And sometimes we interview guests. Sometimes I just talk about different communication topics, and often there are little tidbits of things about communication for everybody. So that's my hope, is that whatever you hear on this podcast is useful to you, of value, or at least entertaining. That's the idea. So I was just recently in Vegas for the New Media Expo 2013, and it's over now, but I had a wonderful time. It was the first time I'd ever been in Vegas, and I have some particular feelings about that. I wasn't there for any other reason than the conference, and I didn't really get out much to see the city. So I can't really say much about that. That might have to wait until next time. But the conference itself was fabulous, and I have come back feeling very motivated to implement all sorts of the ideas that I learned from the presentations that I attended and from the people that I met. And that was mostly what it was about, was meeting different people and learning what it was they were doing and more about who they were and why they were doing what they were doing. And that was the interesting thing to me. One of the things I noticed is that people are really, really generous. And I think that is sometimes different than what you find in other places. You know, the new media community that makes up bloggers and podcasters, video producers, and other forms of content creators seems to be a very generous community. Yes, there's competition in some cases, of course, but for the most part, people seem to be eager to share their experiences with one another, their learnings, their advice, on all sorts of topics. And I found it really, really refreshing. If I had, a question or a problem with my podcast, all I had to do was ask somebody I was talking to about that, and suddenly I was getting all sorts of expert advice freely given to me from people who had been there, done that in many cases. And so it was invaluable in that way, and it really, really was motivating. And I guess that's the purpose of going to conferences, is the motivation of it, and the learning. But it really did all come together. One of the things that was really emphasized was that content creators are changing people's lives in real and meaningful ways. And you might ask, how can a blog or a podcast change your life? Well, I can honestly say that it's entirely possible. As some of you know from the beginnings of my podcast, I had no idea what a blog even was in the summer of 2011. And it wasn't until the fall that I started my own blog here at CommunicationDiva.com, and then in the December of that year that I started this podcast. If you had said to me back then in the summer of 2011 that I would be speaking on a panel in a presentation at Vegas at the New Media Expo, or that I would be talking about podcasting, I would have said something like, yeah, right, you're crazy. And so for me, a blog and a podcast have completely changed my life. And not even just producing them, but finding people who were doing this before me and learning from them and asking questions of them, probably ad nauseum, asking and emailing and saying, well, how do I do this and how do I do that and what do I do to make this work on my site? And so all of that really, really made a difference. And I was so very grateful that there were people out there when I was first starting who would be happy to share at no charge, for no cost, what it was that I was needing. And I am very grateful to those people, and I often try and mention them in my podcast. And then at the other end, podcasts and blogs that touch people around the world, people who we may not even be aware of. I had a lovely email a while back from a teenage boy in Brazil who thanked me for helping him to learn English. Apparently he can understand my voice easily, and he has been listening in order to practice English and to learn the language. And for this particular young man, I am making a difference, and that's what I hope to do in whatever way is helpful. I hope to help you with an idea, a concept, a skill, a technique, whatever it is you need to help you move more deeply into your conversations, your communications, and then in the end, your relationships. So I'm not alone in this, I don't think, whether through self-help or instructional or entertainment content. New media content creators are offering up some wonderful resources on almost every topic. And I have, again, as I said before, found all sorts of help on just about anything I needed help on. And so I think that's just wonderful. I have some highlights, and these are all listed on the show notes at communicationdiva.com. You can go over there and you can click on any of the names or the titles that are highlighted, and that will link you directly to the websites of the people that I mentioned. And these are all people that were either presenting with me or that presented sessions that I attended and that I felt motivated by. So I'll start off thanking the people that were on the panel with me: Peter Adal, PJ Jonas, and Dustin Hartzler. And our presentation was called The Top 10 Reasons Why Bloggers Should Launch a Podcast. And it was well attended. Our audience was small but engaged. We had lots of great questions from the audience, and we actually had to cut them off towards the end because we were running out of time. But we had fun sharing stories and ideas with the people gathered. There was lots of laughter, and it just felt really relaxed. And the feedback that we've gotten has been positive and encouraging. So thank you, Peter, for putting that together, and to PJ and Dustin for being wonderful people to collaborate with. And I hope that we get to do other things together in the future. So they are very interesting, dynamic people, and I do encourage you to go check out their websites. Then I attended a session called How to Effectively Communicate to a Global Audience, and this was full of great ideas from the international panel of Karen Hogue, Mark Pendleton, Farnoosh Brock, and Matthew Workman. And they are people who work in very different areas and in different countries in some cases. And this was a very good reminder to me that many of you in the audience are not North Americans, and that I need to be mindful of talking to you about holidays and topics that are specific to this location. And I do try to explain things that may not be ultimately clear, but I would love feedback from you that if I'm doing something or mentioning something that you don't understand, I will be happy for you to be able to let me know that, and I will be careful of that in the future. But it was a great session, and it was interesting to hear from people who are podcasting both in different countries and in different languages that that it is sometimes a challenge to understand terminologies, to understand turns of phrases, and also to understand holidays and specific events that are only of interest to people in this continent. So I hope that I'm careful with that, but I imagine that sometimes I forget. So that was a very good reminder. It was a great session. Then I went outside of the podcasting track and went to a blogging session called Link Parties, Blog Hops, and Other Little-Known Techniques to Grow and Promote Your Blog. Whew, that's a long title. And it was with 6 women, 6 sisters, and their dad from a website called sixsistersstuff.com. And I really enjoyed this presentation, and I learned a lot. But mostly I got motivated to step outside of my usual practices and to try new things, which for all of us is a really good idea, especially in the brand new beginnings of a year. So this was a motivating session for me, and part of it was seeing so many women, 6 sisters, doing so well in the online world, because frankly, most of the people that attend these conferences are of the male persuasion, and that's great, but it is nice to see some women excelling and doing so well in their field of interest as well. So that was a very motivating session. I had no idea what link parties or blog hops were, and now I do, and I'm not going to go into explaining them all here, but if anybody's interested, you can ask me and I can try and explain it to you. But I learned a lot, and I think a lot of things that were pertinent also to podcasters. So there you go. Another source of motivation was the presentation by John Dumas called Entrepreneur on Fire, an Idea, a Plan, Execution. Now, this was John's incredible story of how he came to be where he is today, completely and utterly on fire. And he's only been doing his podcast for about 3 or 4 months at the time of this recording, but he is completely, as he says, ignited. So he's took an idea, he went through careful planning, he launched it with the support of several key people, and he is well on his way to reaching his dreams. And a couple of us said to him, you look so different and you act so different than you did last year when we first met you. Because last year when we met him in New York City at the same conference, albeit he had been very ill, he had some flu or something, but he didn't even walk the same way that he does now. He's so confident and so assured and just easygoing and easy to talk to. And it was just wonderful to see how far John has come in such a short time. So do check him out and find out what it is he's doing, because he's very fun to listen to. Then I went to a session with 2 people who are quite well known but unknown to me, Jason or Jay Van Orden and Jeremy or Sterling Franson from InternetBusinessMastery.com, and they gave a presentation that literally had us in tears. And through the power of storytelling, they shared how those they have helped have gone on to help others in incredibly meaningful ways. And one of the stories that they told, I won't retell it here, but one of the stories they retold ended up in how they helped a woman create a website that helped a woman not lose her baby. So, it was very, very touching, very motivational. The session was billed as one about making money, but it was so much more about the human side of what it is we do, offering answers to those with questions, solving problems for people, sharing ideas and information, and touching lives in ways that we often never ever know about. So I must say that this by far was my favorite session, and I will definitely be checking those guys out in the future for more of what it is they do. So that was InternetBusinessMastery.com, and they were very inspiring people to be around. And another one that I really liked was Jonathan Shank, and he introduced me to a whole new idea in his session called How to Use a Virtual Assistant to Produce Your Podcast. Now, I like Jonathan's take on what a virtual assistant is, in that this is a person who is an entrepreneur in their own right, willing to work together with you, and who has his or her own unique set of skills and talents. And so when working together with somebody who is a VA or a virtual assistant, you can actually move forward in your own endeavors and that help that other person move forward in their endeavors too, no matter where they are in the world. The use of a VA in life in general can free up all sorts of time that's eaten up by doing things that are administrative rather than creative. And I don't know that I'm ready to have one yet, but I can certainly see how partnering with somebody who works as a virtual assistant, or even a few people who have different skills, could make life much less complicated. So it's sitting there in the back of my mind. You know how ideas go. They rumble around for a while sometimes until they take root, and then we act upon them. Well, right now, this idea is just rumbling around in the back of my head. And at some point, perhaps when Communication Diva grows bigger, then I will consider looking for somebody to help me with some of the administrative duties. Although I do want to always answer my own emails and tweets and things like that, and continue to respond to people in a personal way. I think that's really important, especially when we're talking about communication. But some of the things, like some of the research before writing articles or producing the notes for podcasting, that kind of thing, I could see being done by a virtual assistant. So that was a very interesting experience for me too. And then the best gathering time that happened for me was one evening after the official business was over. Actually, it was after the 8th annual People's Choice Podcast Awards, which were the best ever attended, standing room only. It was pretty exciting, and lots of big names there, you know, ESPN and NASA and Disney and TEDx and all sorts of other people were there. After all of that was over, close to 30 of us gathered in a suite and were able to network together and visit without the pounding music of the mixer parties at the nightclubs that were offered by the conference. So this was lovely. It was a time when we got together, we could actually talk, we could meet new people. Many of us, 15 of us, were from the podcast mastermind group, which meets twice a month for an hour and a half online, so that we can hone our craft and learn more and just take our own businesses to the next level. So that was just a wonderful gathering. And then at the end of that, when most of the gathering had gone, there were 7 members of the podcast mastermind and one dear friend who remained and recorded an episode of the podcast Answer Man show. I think it's episode 291. And I do have a link to it again at communicationdiva.com for you to listen to. This is an episode where we're all sitting around talking into the recorder about our time in Vegas, our thoughts about the conference, and it was recorded at the very end of a very long day. So there's lots of humor and giggling, and I think we were all pretty darn tired. So you can listen to that if you like as well. There's a link to it there, and hear us in a very relaxed state, having a good time. And I'm on there as well. So those were my highlights. There were many, many more interesting people that I was able to meet, and some of them I will be sharing with you in interviews in the coming months. So I've met some interesting people and traded cards with them, and so my plan is that over the next coming months, I will contact some of them, connect with them, and bring their insights on communicating to you. It's going to take me a while to digest all that went on at this conference. And as I do, likely you'll see the results on the website or hear them in the podcast yourself. Lots of new ideas to help me help you more effectively and more efficiently. And so one thing I'm wondering about is, what inspiring events have you been to that have helped you to learn and to motivate you and to move you into whatever it is that you are passionate about? Have you been to conferences conferences or workshops or retreats or events that have stirred you up and made you think about what it is you're doing and maybe how you could do it better. And what are some of those stories? I would love to hear those stories. So please come to the website at communicationdiva.com or email me at jenn@communicationdiva.com or find me on Twitter, JENN Swanson, and then the number 2 is my Twitter name. And you can find the Communication Diva page at Facebook as well. So I would be happy to hear from you. I am motivated, but firstly, I'm busy filling a suitcase tonight and tomorrow morning, and then Scott and I are taking off away from the snow that we had this morning and into the sun on a faraway Caribbean island, and I can't wait. I've never been there before, and this is the first time that we have taken a sun vacation in the middle of winter. And again, it snowed here this morning. Not lots, but enough for the sky to be dark and gray and as down and miserable as it's been for months and months and months. So I might even record an interview while there. We'll see. But I will be having a long-awaited rest. And so until the next time, this is Jen Swanson. Do take good care and happy conversation.